Hudson Valley Weather Senior Forecaster Bill Potter with a Saturday morning update on Hurricane Irma. As of the 8 a.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center, Hurricane Irma is a Category 4 hurricane with winds sustained at 130 miles per hour with gusts up to 155 miles per hour. The central pressure is up a little bit overnight, up to 937 millibars, as the storm tracks west-northwest at around 12 miles per hour. As of the 8 a.m. update, Hurricane Irma is centered just over the northern coast of Cuba as it continues to track right along the Cuba coast, and it will continue to do so for most of the day on Saturday before it begins to shift north Saturday night and into Sunday morning. Overnight, we've had a continued trend in the track shift toward the west. Over the last several days, we've been focusing on trying to emphasize to people that regardless of where you lived in Florida, that this was a major threat to you due to the size of the storm, and as well as the fact that the margin for error on the track was actually wider than the actual peninsula of Florida. So it's impossible at that point in time to really say the east will be worse than the west, or the west will be worse than the east. As we get closer to the storm actually unfolding, we're beginning to see that the western track is almost certain at this point, and the question is really how far west does Irma track, and that is going to have big ramifications for both residents on the east coast of Florida and on the west coast of Florida. Alright, here is the change in the track overnight. This was the European model yesterday, and overnight you can see that it has shifted it west about 50 miles. It is a noticeable trend to the west. The GFS model, same thing. This was the Friday evening model. And then overnight it has also pushed it west-southwest, and really the trend that we're seeing here is that a landfall looks increasingly likely anywhere along this green line. The trend has just been consistent to push it west, and really we don't think that anyone in the Miami area will be seeing a landfall, although you can see from these this wind map here that anywhere where you see gray on this map is indicative of hurricane force winds. Alright, so even though the track has shifted it a bit further to the west, alright, it is still going to be a significant event. As we continue to move forward, we do see the possibility of the east coast being spared the worst of this storm, which will undoubtedly raise some criticisms of the forecasting and over evacuation of the east coast of Florida. But with a storm like this, when you see what this storm will do to the locations where it does make landfall, especially on the western coast of Florida, the evacuations were warranted. And unfortunately the science of weather is not perfect, and the hammering out of the exact track of something like this, a difference of 50 miles is a huge difference in terms of impact, but in terms of weather forecasting, it is like the head of a needle. It can move just a little bit results in major change in outcomes for certain areas. So as we go forward here, let me see here, just got to get out of this. Alright, so this is our GFS model wind gust. Alright, this is the new model run overnight. Max gusts of about 115 knots, which is roughly around 130 to 135 miles per hour wind gusts, would be focused along the southwest coast of Florida. As it moves north, you can see that these gusts do make it substantially far inland, almost to central Florida. So just because you don't live right along the coast of Florida, you will not be spared the impacts of this storm. As well, anywhere where you see gray on this map represents hurricane force wind gusts. So even though the storm is pushed further west, you still could see hurricane force wind gusts along the eastern coast of Florida. So while the impact may be lessened, you are by no means going to be spared from this storm. The European model, you'll also see a shift west in terms of highest wind gust. This was the highest wind gusts yesterday. Overnight, you can see that it has shifted further west. So anyone from the Keys of Florida all the way up the western coast, you need to be on high alert now as the models really trend west with this storm. Just a little bit, not a huge shift, but enough to where we are seeing the increased likelihood of landfall somewhere from the Tampa area on south, possibly down toward Naples area. Again, the track will continue to wobble as the impacts of Cuba do continue to affect the storm in its structure and in its what will be its future track. It's always a moving target. Weather does not operate in a vacuum. The things that are influencing the storm right now will ultimately influence where the storm goes in the future. So, folks along the east coast of Florida, this is slightly good news. This is a better case scenario for you. Folks on the west coast of Florida, not, the opposite is true. Again, storm surge, we just want to end with this and emphasize, storm surge is going to be a big issue here. Anywhere from the Keys of Florida all the way up toward Port Charlotte, possibly even up to Sarasota. You're talking about substantial storm surge, up greater than 9 feet, 9 to 12 feet storm surge, pretty much all along the coast. And because there is so much low-lying areas and marshland, we expect extensive flooding in southwest Florida. This is going to be a historic event for many people. And again, we want to emphasize not to let your guard down, even though things are looking better for areas like West Palm Beach and Miami. You still will have impacts. They just will not be the full brunt of this storm. So we will continue to have updates as we go through the day and into tomorrow. We'll probably just have updates on Facebook periodically. We won't be doing hour-by-hour updates, but we did see a bit of a shift west in the track, so we did want to have a brief discussion this morning. Thank you for following Hudson Valley Weather, and keep checking for more updates later on. Thank you.